In the previous lesson, we learned about how can we use CSS selectors to locate web elements. In this lesson, we'll learn about the pseudo classes which Playwright offers to use and select web elements based on different conditions. So let's say we want to do is select all the heading elements in the page. So we will likely use the page locator, specify the tag name, which will be h1, and then just highlight all of the instances. You can see these are all the headings with the h1 tag name. Now let's say what we want to do is only select this heading element with the nav bars text. Now here what we can do is just use the get by text locator, but if we really want to use the CSS one instead, then we can just use the text pseudo-class which Playwright offers. Now pseudo-class is just like a function which we can run on any CSS selector like this one. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll start with our CSS selector, that is h1. And now because we want to use a pseudo-class, what we do is start it with a colon and then type out the name of the pseudo class, that is text in this case, and then end it with parentheses, just like any function. And now what we can do is provide the text pseudo class, the text we want to select, and in this case it is nav bars. So let's type that out, and it's nav bars. Now we can go ahead and highlight the same. You can see the nav bars heading getting highlighted because it contains the text nav bars. Now this text selector is also a loose selector because if any element contains a certain text, it will go ahead and select it. So if I just say nav, you will see it goes ahead and still selects it, and it also selects another element which would have nav maybe somewhere else. You can see it is one of two. So if we expand it and look through the document, we should find another selection. You can see it contains the nav text. That's why it got selected. So if we only want to select an element with the exact text here, instead of the text, we can use the text hyphen is pseudo-class selector. So now if I hit enter, you can see none gets selected because there is no element with only nav as the text. So if I modify it as navs, you can see this gets selected. So you can have a strict selector, that is text hyphen s pseudo-class, or you can have a loose selector, that is just the text pseudo-class. There's another pseudo-class selector which is not that used but should show that to you as well. That is, let's say we want to select an element, so page.locator, which is visible. So let's say we will have this right here. So if I go ahead and click it, this drop down becomes visible only when I click on this button. So let's go ahead and pull its code. You can see it is a div with the class of drop down menu. So let's go ahead and try to select it. So drop down menu, and because it is a class, we'll start with its tag name, that is div, and then a dot after is the class name. Now if I go ahead and highlight it, you can see it gets highlighted, and there are 12 instances of dropdowns like this. Now let's say we only want to select the one that is visible, that is this one right here. What we can do is use the visible pseudo-class selector. Again, let's go ahead and type it out from the beginning. So the tag name, the class name, so drop down menu, and then we'll use a pseudo-class. So we begin with a colon, and then we will say visible like this. That is the name of the pseudo-class selector. Now I can just go ahead and highlight the same. Now if I hit enter, you can see it only selects this element that is visible. Now if I go ahead and click on it again, it vanishes away and there is no selector that is visible. So you can use the visible pseudo-class selector to select web elements that are visible. And finally, moving on to our last pseudo-class, which we'll discuss in this lesson, is the Nth-match. So let's go ahead and try to select all the primary buttons. You can see its code, that is, it starts with button and has a class of button primary. So let's go ahead and use the same. So let's go ahead and create a simple locator with CSS. So the tag name is button and the class name is btn-primary. Now let's just go ahead and highlight the same. You can see there are 74 instances with this selector matching, that is a button with the button primary class applied. Now let's say what we want to do is only select the fourth button right here, that is, you can see 4 of 74. To do that, we can use the Nth-match pseudo class in our CSS selector. So we'll begin with defining a new locator, and here what we'll do is begin with a new class. That is, we will use a colon without any CSS selector, and the pseudo class name is nth-match like this. Now to this pseudo class, we provide the selector, that is the button selector, and then its number. So first of all, here what we can do is just say like a button dot button primary, and then we can specify its number, which is 4. So to this Nth-match pseudo class, we provide 2 arguments. That is, the first is the actual element selector and then the number we want to select. So let's go ahead and highlight the same. You can see only this button with the 4th number getting selected. So you can use the Nth-match selector to select a element based on its number. And here you can use other selectors as well. That is, you could be using a CSS, a pseudo-class selector inside here. So let's say we would like to select a button with the text of primary, and that will be the first here. You can see the first element with the text primary getting selected. If I say select the third one, that is this outlined one, so here I can just say the third, hit enter, you can see this getting highlighted. So you can use the Nth-match pseudo-class selector to select an element based on its number, that is its position. So in this lesson, we learned about the pseudo-classes that Playwright offers with the CSS selectors, and that's how you can use them.